So, hey guys, welcome to La Bóveda podcast. Today in La Bóveda, we're talking about a game unlike anything you've seen. Imagine mixing the fear of the unknown with the discipline of communication, learning Morse code while trying to survive in a destroyed alien lab. That's the heart of SOS Forgotten Planet, and it's an educational roguelike survival horror elements developed by Risky Biscuit Games. Joining me today is Risky, the mind behind it all. Thanks for coming up, brother, and let's hop on to SOS, bro.
Yeah, thanks for having me, man. It's been
Hey,
pretty good. I've watched the past few episodes of yours, and it's I feel a little intimidated by coming into the other guys, but
no, man, I'm so excited, dude. Like, I'm a fool for. I don't consider myself a purist with the survival horror genre, and that's like a trending topic nowadays. I enjoy the genre and all of its ramifications. I'm the guy that enjoyed Resident Evil 5. I'm the guy that enjoyed Resident Evil 6. I am the guy that it doesn't matter what it's related to that genre. I'm gonna go in there, and even if it's not what I was expecting, I'm gonna look at the good things. I enjoy this a lot. And
a sad fact about Resident Evil for me is my only game that I've played of the series is Resident Evil 5.
That's the only one.
That was the only one.
Yep. Just on your to be fair, on your defense, Resident Evil 5 has, I think it's one of the biggest chunks of lore in the franchise because it's like a culmination of that Wesker story, Wesker Chris Redfield story, and it goes back and talks about the progenitor virus. It's a very good title. People.
I mean, at the time when it came out, it was still fun for me to play. It's just
it didn't hit home for like. I'm gonna be completely honest. When I played 4, I wasn't even paying attention to the comments being made by a very small chunk of the community about it having too much action. I was just enjoying the hell out of the game. And then when 5 came out, I was so pumped of the setting. The game was in Africa. There's this progenitor virus. We're going back to the roots. I didn't even pay attention. I just start, and then I remember I was fighting Irving in the hill, and I'm like, this doesn't feel like a Resident Evil game. There's something weird here. And then the part that you were on the Jeep and you're shooting. And then I'm like, this reminds me of 4. And then it all hit at once. I'm like, oh my God, these games are packed with action. I was a lot younger back then. And I think nowadays, I believe that all these games that bring fresh stuff like that, they're like leap of fates into what if. And 5 was very, very successful. 4 was successful as well. I think it's one of the most successful, if not the most. And then we had 6, which, in my opinion, they tried to do so much with it that they didn't focus specifically on one thing, and they just did like this. You have a survival horror campaign, a action pack one like Resident Evil 4 over the shoulder, and then you have a one that it just feels like you're running into SOCOM or something. You just, it's
yeah. At least when I hear people talk about it, they always like the 4 is like the precious child of the honor student and stuff. 5 is like, this is going downhill, and then like 6 is like, we don't even talk about that one.
That's the kid that nobody loves. They'll just shove it in there. Yeah, that's how I feel about it. When speaking with there are certain people that appreciate them. I think that Resident Evil, to be fair, if you look at the first 3, those are like the core that set. Like, I mean, the first one set up the hallmarks and define the genre moving forward. So everything that, when you talk about survival horror, or you're going to talk about survival horror elements, that's the measuring stick. So then everything that came as any other genre, the years go by, the influences, what we're living in real life change. So it's going to be the art, because guys, games, this is art. So the developers are when they're building their craft, they're being influenced for so many stuff that it's happening at the moment, including pop culture. So everything's going to change. And now there's a revival of going back to the roots, and it's being carried by the indie scene, which is one of the greatest things ever, because I'm enjoying this ride like hell. So let's start talking about SOS. I think let's start with that origin story. risky. What inspired you to create SOS Forgotten Planet, and how did the idea evolve into a survival horror roguelike with educational elements? I think that's the best description I can put together. But
very good. Yeah. Well, like all good things, it started with my wife. We were sitting at a dinner table. I think it was just like a Christmas table, and like, people are talking around, and we thought like, hey, it would be fun like if we could like communicate just like secretly somehow. And then my wife kind of like half jokingly said like, hey, you should make a game where we can learn Morse code in, so we could like tap to communicate each other to it. So I kind of got my brain rolling a little bit, and thinking about like, how would I make a game that's actually enjoyable to play and would actually come away giving you something, right? I don't like games that are like, in the sense that they're like educational first, right? Like you'll come into, there's a lot of things like Duolingo's cool, right? Like but it's like, it's an educational thing with some game layers on it, right? Like it's not like a game to it, right? And also at the time I played a lot of a game called Europa Universalis 4.
Okay.
Which, if you don't know, but it's like a grand strategy game where you play basically as any country, like literally any country, starting at 1444 the year, and it goes all the way into 1820. But it's an entirely deep and complex game. But the thing that I got out of playing that for 2,000 hours is that I am really good at knowing where countries are on the map. Like, if you tell me, like, especially in Europe, Africa has changed quite a bit after like 1820. So that's a little bit different, but like I can know where a lot of areas are now because I spent like 2,000 hours looking at a map. And so I kind of thought, how do I make a game that teaches you by using a mechanic that you use a lot, and then you come away with something,
right?
And then I combined with that with, I heard there was a study that basically came out that showed that people learned better when there was like an adrenaline response slightly after they learned something, right? So if you're learning something, it obviously hooks into that primal instinct of, hey, if I've learned something and there was an immediate adrenaline shock after it, that's probably something I should keep in my mind and keep important. So I thought, well, if I'm making a game that I want to teach you things, maybe I should add a little bit of horror in there.
Sure.
Make that a little bit, more impactful and more meaningful.
It will definitely stay. It would definitely stay, right?
Yes. So that's how kind of learning Morse code and horror came in combined. And then the other kind of, when we talk about game design, we often like go with pillars on like, what are our main things that we like are standing for this game, right? What are the things that need to be in this game to work? So I already started with this too, right? Morse code is the first, horror was the second, and the third was replayability. And there's kind of like a support for the Morse code. I didn't want a game that you could just play for 4 hours and then you're done, because you're not going to learn anything long term if you've just played something for 4 hours. Like it's not going to stick into your brain, right? So the game has to be replayable in that way. And so that's where I kind of came with some of the roguelike elements. It's not, I wouldn't necessarily call it an insane roguelike, but it's definitely like the roguelike elements where each time you play the game, you're going to get different equipment that kind of you use. So the game doesn't necessarily have combat, but it has different things that you'll use to navigate the map, or better protect yourself with shields or stuff like that. So you get different types of equipment, and each time you play the game, it's going to be different. Also, another feature that I'm still working on, so I kind of hesitate to say, but like another concept is that the story is going to be slightly different each time you play it. So the causes or the things you're trying to find out are going to be different. So you're not just like replaying the same story over and over again. There's actually going to be kind of like different endings that are different just because you started a new game, not because like you even made a different choice, but because you started a new game, you're kind of in a different reality. So I wanted to make sure that the game had that replayability option, because otherwise you wouldn't play it over and over and you wouldn't learn Morse code kind of like to the degree that I wanted you to.
I think you mentioned the story changing, and the story doesn't necessarily change on this game that I'm going to mention, but I think one of the games that give me a hard time to finish as of recent, we're talking about maybe 3 years back, it's Returnal. And man, I had fun with that game. But I kind of feel what your intention is with the Morse code. Because if you're having, in Returnal, I had to learn everything. It's like every time you die, you start right at the beginning. There's no easy way, right at the beginning. And it gives you this sequence that the first time you see it, the spacecraft is going down, and there's like a huge like action pack sequence where they use like she's gonna die, you know, because it's like super, you know, that it's gonna crash, and then it opens up with she surviving and there's the hostile planet go, and every time you die, everything swaps, and it's you have to learn everything on the game. So I kind of can relate on how important that would be when you're trying to learn something as difficult as Morse code. For us, it's not anything that we use on a daily basis.
Yeah, for sure.
Protagonist and character development, they're all hallmarks of horror games. And you mentioned that a horror game is like, that was your second intention when building is, of course, your main intention is the Morse code. So we have Clara Redmond. That's accurate, right?
Yeah, that's the main character.
So Clara Redmond has a personal connection to the planet. It's Oro. And how do you craft her character and her motivations?
So I kind of came to the story as I had to figure out first. Once I figured out the mechanic, like I used Morse code to open doors. Okay, well, why is that a thing in the world, right? And so at first I was kind of thinking about, you're investigating this lab that, went dark. And initially I actually had this concept that it was going to be like, you're like a sole operator in this lab, and then there's somebody else like sending you these codes that you then have to listen to and then like use to open doors. But it was pretty convoluted, so then I kind of just scrapped that part. But I did like the idea that there's this kind of lab area or science environment that has this way of listening to frequencies to open the door. So I had to do that. And then, so I knew that, okay, well, there's a destroyed lab. That's kind of like my first aspect. And then I wanted to have someone to kind of explore it. And so I wanted them to have some reason to explore it rather than just being kind of like Joe Schmo, coming across some random destroyed thing.
Yeah.
So I felt it was kind of came back and forth. It's been done before, right? And so the idea on Clara was that 50 years ago, this planet was completely destroyed by her grandfather, who was like at the time kind of like the emperor. So when you speak of like this space nation called the Union, and you still don't know quite why he destroyed it, but he basically he glassed the surface, which is like the process of like turning the surface into like molten lava, right?
Okay.
To turn into glass at the end. And then he also, in addition to not just doing that, he also corroded the atmosphere to such a degree that like it would melt your face off.
Wow.
So like out of this planet of millions of people, like no one survived. So you can imagine that doesn't make him necessarily popular amongst the people of the space.
They don't like that guy that much. Yeah.
Yeah. So he fled, taking his family with him, and then kind of 50 years obviously go by. Partway through, he has, a family in exile, and his granddaughter, who's always grown up with this like granddad, that's just like to her like a normal granddad, right? Because they've been in exile, and naturally you just kind of fall in love with your parents and your family. And so when she's confronted with like the fact that like, oh, your grandfather's just like this horrible person, and everyone like blames her kind of through that lens because she's like the granddaughter of this horrible person. She has this compulsion to prove them wrong. So her goal in life has basically always been like, no, my grandfather is actually good, and so I'm going to go to this planet and prove it. So she, at some point, steals a little ship, takes her friend Flynn with her, kind of begrudgingly, and goes to this planet to investigate. And that's kind of where this game starts.
That's great. Procedural narrative and lore. That's what I heard. It's when we talk about that, I need to ask you about each playthrough is unique, and with different causes behind the planet's destruction. Because you mentioned it before, right? You just mentioned that. How do you balance that procedural generation with a coherent story?
With a lot of random background thinking about this. There's a lot of times I have like 3 children, and I'm often when I'm putting one of them down, because I'm just like walking with one of the children, just holding them, trying to get them to sleep. I use that all that time is just thinking about like, how am I weaving all these possibilities into work. And naturally, I mean, with video games, there's a sneaky way where basically you can make it so that kind of roads converge, like all the roads lead to Rome, but at the same time, there's different kind of avenues that you take. So even though, in one case, A thing might happen, in one case, B thing happens, well, you still have to get to C at the end.
Yes.
But the concept is that it's still quite different in the feel of things. So there's always going to be anchor points in the story that are going to be kind of the same, but the story around those anchor points are going to be changing.
That's interesting. That's pretty interesting. You know that I've seen very, very few games doing something similar, not exactly the same. I think we talked with what's his name? I think it's Fernando, that he's working on the Lacerator, and you lose limbs in that game, and every time you lose limbs, you can't. For example, you lose your arm, and then right after you lose your arm because you were trying to get a gun out of a safe. Now you have the gun but have no arm, so your aiming sucks because you can't use both arms, and the next door that you were supposed to open needed both arms to open it, so now you have to find another way around. It impacts how you get to the end, right? And it changes the story as you go. I think it gives games, and this is something that a lot of people take for granted, but replayability is super important, at least for me. People still ask me to this day, especially with me, I'm an enthusiast of the survival horror genre, and like, why do you still play Resident Evil 1 and 2 and 3, even though you know every key, where it is? And I'm like, bro, have you played it? And they were like, yeah. So you were saying to me that you wouldn't play it again? And they all ask, their response is always the same. Oh yeah, I will play it again. Then they did a good job, right? Mm-hmm. It's in there's a million ways that it's up to you on how you get those keys, but the key or whatever you need to proceed needs to go in the same place. But you can backtrack that mansion in so many different ways. The same way with others. I mean, Resident Evil 2 and 3, they feel like more linear at some point. But when you're like, for example, you're in the Raccoon City Police Department, it feels like you're backtracking in between those rooms. But there's like, I don't know, there's something about these games when they're done right, they stick with you. Another thing that it's super important for, at least for the audience, that given the experience of me talking with them and reading the comments on the dark corners of the internet, how I used to I like to call places like, I don't know if there's still people that use Blogger. There's still people on, Reddit is huge. X, and there's threads, and there's like there's so many, like, am I missing one? Blue Sky, and you can read the comments. Environmental design, and how do you choose a design? You choose and design the different zones of the labs and plan it to create tension and that sense of mystery. How do you tie all that in?
Well, from the beginning of ours, I had kind of like this concept that there's going to be kind of 3 distinct areas throughout the game. As of yet, I've only really been working on the labs, and it's still kind of in development, very much that speaking. But there's the kind of concept of just giving some variety, and the idea that this is not just like one single place, right? It's an entire planet kind of that you're going to jump in around in. So, there's going to be this initial kind of labs area, more focused in the beginning, and then you kind of get into the more residential areas, like where the people actually lived. There's kind of a concept called the void spaces that I have in this game, where it's kind of these scientists have figured out these little pocket dimensions, where they're just empty space, but they've decided to they figured out how to get into them, and then they built little houses and buildings and everything in that area. But it's completely dark out into the further out. So you have this building in the middle of nowhere, and all that's you can see out there is just darkness. And I just thought that was horrifying. So I figured that should be a cool little area to be in. And the last area I think I'm still fluctuating back and forth between whether it's not going to be a farmland kind of area, but with a sci-fi twist on how they would have farmed, kind of like underground in a sci-fi environment. But that's kind of the third area that's going to be used as well.
As a biologist myself, I always movies like Total Recall and all these movies like 90s and maybe late 80s about space traveling and how you were going to subsist, how the food was going to be packed, how are you going to do this in other planets. It's like I'm eager to see that because I'm a fan of space exploration. Like my kid in here in this household, we're super huge on No Man's Sky and games like that. My kids love those games. He's always playing. He loves survival horror as me. I mean, he grew up with me, so he was just watching me play. But his things are the Souls games and games that are crafting related, but they have something else. Games that are just for crafting, he hates them. And it's like, you know, he grew up playing Minecraft and he's getting into game dev himself. He's been like an autodidact. He's just teaching himself stuff. So I think I got to the part that I think it's going to be interesting as well. The rest of it has been super interesting. The way that you're integrating all of these things into a horror-like environment. But I really want to get to the sound, right? The soundscape of the game. And I always like maybe tie together soundscape and tension. Because now in this sounds, there's sound and Morse code. And are core to that gameplay elements. How do you design the audio to guide, maybe scare, and immerse players simultaneously while using that Morse code? What's the whole deal with it?
I mean, to some degree, it's the Morse code is like just a different sound that you have to do. I mean, it's the beeping is kind of an eerie thing to some degree, but I feel like the other parts of the sound is just finding ways to integrate that into like a cohesive experience. Like one thing I did early on when I got a composer to do the one song that I have, I actually got them to make two different tracks of the music. One with it's like a lot more toned down, and then one that's the same track, but then they just added more elements to it, right? And the whole concept there is that then I can seamlessly go back and forth between those two tracks. I just play them both, but then I can like tune one volume up, tune one volume down. And so whenever there's like a chase sequence or the monster sees you and they're chasing you, I cue up the higher music, and then once you know you've escaped the monster, then the music goes back down, and then that kind of blends in. But it makes it for more cohesive soundtrack, which I thought was really cool. The other thing, I somewhat like to troll people somewhat, but I just put like a random sound playing thing in my game. So like I can't remember, it's every like 20 to 60 seconds or something. I just kind of play like a random like environment sound. So, you know, it's just like a crack, like a pipe cracking or like a hiss or something like that, just to keep people on edge. And there's tons of people that have played the first level of my game, and there's no monster in the first level, but I can see them like creeping down hallways as they like play this first level because they'll have heard a sound, and now they think there's like a monster.
And that's one of the hallmarks, bro. That's one of the hallmarks of especially the genre that I preach. I mean, survival horror has that thing where if you gotta think about it, in Silent Hill 1, you're running in, right? And you can open 10 doors. And out of those 10 doors, there was only one enemy. But in a random door, right? The rest of the rooms, sometimes they don't even make sense. They're especially like in the school. I hate it as a kid. You go in Silent Hill into a school and you open and you walk and there's something you need to pick up, but in order to do that, you need to get to that room. All the doors are closed and there's nothing, just sounds. And every time you hear something, you stop. It's like, what the hell is that? And you go back. And one of the scenes that stuck with me is the cat on the school in Silent Hill. That's horrible. The meow of the cat, and then you go there, you open the door that's like moving, you're thinking that the cat is there, and then it's like, oh, it's just a cat. There's nothing. And then you hear like the cat being torn apart, and then you go and there's like blood everywhere, but you can't see it. And it's just like things like that, they stick. And that's I think that's how these franchises are so successful.
Yeah, one of my favorite things to try to emphasize in survival horror, or amongst my game specifically, is the fact that whenever you feel safe, I'm going to make you not feel safe. So, there's like mechanics where for the first little bit, you can close the door on the monster.
Oh yeah,
that's not always going to be the case.
Okay,
They'll learn to kind of get around your tricks. So some things like that I really want to emphasize, that you'll get a familiarity with feeling safe, and then you're not going to feel safe after a certain amount of time, because that safety will be ripped away from you.
You mentioned that, and I just put it out a video a couple weeks back. I don't know if you saw it, that it's called "What is Survival Horror?" And one of the things that I believe as a motto, as a content creator of this, is that I see survival horror now, the genre, as a spectrum, and everything starts with that measuring stick of Resident Evil, and then everything ramifies or gets out and goes in different directions. But I think the general rule, because games even that are not survival horror but comes from that root, and they're huge, like titles like Alan Wake, and I don't know, we can mention so much of them. There's this element that they all share, that it's like when you start feeling in control, that's when the survival horror element starts sweeping away, right? Because we all remember, like, if you finish Resident Evil 3 or 2 or any of the OGs, there are like these purists are always calling them out. But sometimes I think they forget that if you unlock the unlimited ammo, bro, that turns into who finishes the game first. It's like you're running. Yeah. If you get the Magnum, you're just giving headshots like randomly and walking around. And if you understand and know and memorize where the stuff is, you can finish those games very quick. There's a lot of people doing speed runs around. I think it's that element. It's like you said, when you feel safe, the only place you should feel safe is in that place that the developer shows as the safe room, right? And it's just like there's something into it too. Like when you build a safe room, it has to have like a particular music or environment that, like, it needs to make you feel safe, right? So you're like resting, and then you go out again, back to the fray, right?
Yeah, I mean, one of my favorite, because I watch a lot of like game essayists, people that talk about the games and kind of talk about what they're doing well and what they're doing wrong, right? And I think one of them mentioned there was, I think, one of the moments in one of the Resident Evils where you have this safe room, right, for all this time, but at one point, I think it's in Resident Evil 2, it's Mr. X that just like crashes through your safe room.
Yeah.
And then from then on, you're like, okay, well, is he going to do that again, right? Those type of things I think are incredible moments, right?
Resident Evil 3 has Nemesis, because the 2 does it. It's in a specific. It's like a sequence, right? But 3 has this peculiar thing that Nemesis is waiting for you outside. So it doesn't matter how much time you spend in there or how much safe you think you are. You know that if you open the door, he's going to be there. And then it has this randomizer that you don't know if it's going to come from the right or the left side, or so it's I think it depends on how the developer actually works on it. The important thing is do not make the player feel that he's in control. So let's talk about a little bit about gameplay and mechanics. Beyond the Morse code, there are gadgets, right? Inventory and survival systems, we may call them that. How do these mechanics interplay to keep each run challenging and rewarding?
So like the first obviously aspect is the gadgets themselves. So the gadgets can vary from like a shield thing. So you activate the shield, it protects you from some damage. There's maps. So you don't get a map in this game by default. You actually have to find a gadget that enables it. And even then, some of the gadgets, the maps are only like one time you use it, but it costs some resources to like map out the area, or you have to like painstakingly kind of walk through the whole area to map it yourself. So I like to use those type of things. I also don't even by default give you the player location. So at first you actually have to kind of look at the map and be like, okay, I think I'm here, and then kind of map yourself from that point. But there is an upgrade you can get eventually that gives you that if you want it. So there's a lot of different things. There's also like waypoint beacons that you can place down to help you navigate around. And the whole kind of concept on that is just each time you play, you're going to have a different set of those gadgets, and that's going to drastically impact how you play the game, right? If you have the map, you're probably going to be exploring it a bit more. If you have, the scanners, you're probably going to be able to scan and find items a little bit better. But each time you're not going to get the same ones, so it's going to change out how you go about it. There's also food. So there's food in the game, but it works a bit differently than most games. Like most games, you'll have like a hunger value, and it'll just kind of tick down over time. But what instead I have is it's called nourishment. So you have a certain amount of food you can eat every day. So it kind of fills up. And so you can find food around the game, but you can only eat so much of it. And each food gives you some unique effects. Some might just be healing you or like increasing your sanity back. But some also give you like effects like running faster or taking less damage or increasing healing or something like that. And each one of those is kind of randomized as well. So you're going to get different items of that, and that's going to kind of tune how you're going to be playing. Are you going to be playing more aggressively or running faster or doing all these other things? So it kind of creates this new, unique way of things. And also, just as a fun fact for the food, pretty much every food item in the game is inspired by like somebody that's played the game on stream. So whenever I have somebody that I know that I've seen them play the game on stream, I typically reach out to them, ask them like, hey, what food item do you want that appeals to you? And we kind of make up a food item. And so when you play the game and there's a lot of weird names for the foods, that's because they've been inspired by some person that's played the game.
That's great. There's a great community integration into the game. Yeah. So let's talk about September's role. I met September, actually, thanks to September. She was the one to actually make this happen. September is known for her voice work in Luminaville, but not only that, and she's working in other projects and contributes to other games as well. How did she get involved, and what does her performance bring to the experience?
Yeah, so how she got involved is there's like a Discord for game dev, like streaming or something. It's like voice actors Discord.
Yeah.
And so I found that through some other people that I know that stream, and they recommended me that. So I went there. I just advertised, hey, this is the game I'm working on. I could use a female and a male voice actor for the roles, and luckily September volunteered for the female role. Another streamer called Kevin Paculin Phantom Punk volunteered for the Flynn role. And so they've been working there, and then we've also now signed an agreement for some rev share so that they'll share in the profits when I eventually get the game out for money. But
Kevin is a great voice actor too. He's
great. I know they're both fantastic people, and they'll drop in. I didn't mention it earlier, but I actually stream like 90% of the game development of this game. I stream on Twitch.
Yeah, I've hopped in on the lurker side like twice, and one of them I was with some of the guys from the community, and I'm like, guys, I'm gonna be making I have an interview scheduled with Risky about this game, and I wanted to gather their thoughts, and they were like, oh, that looks interesting, like that's how I the thing that I wanted to do for the community and for the audience watching too. It's like there are great games out there that not necessarily are AAA and are being funded thousands and thousands of dollars into it. There are games done by soul devs with a lot of heart, and they want to put out great stuff. And there's a community out there that sometimes in 2025, I don't know why, but it makes for them it's so hard to find new games, even though that there are hundreds of games being published in a week. And I think it's a thing of niche, right? What you like. So I thought it would be nice to create this place where people know exactly what we're doing. This is what we're doing. And anything that may feel related to this, we're going to go and try to see what's up. Like I said, it's not like, in this case, this is not like a pure survival horror games, but it has that element in there, right? And for me, that's enough to peak. Because like I said, that Spectrum started with that, but nowadays there's like sometimes I'm even seeing like games that are not even related in anyhow, and you still see stuff, and like, hey, I know where you got that from. It's interesting. Replayability, I think it's tied to that roguelike design. How do you keep each procedural run feeling fresh while maintaining that core horror tension built into it?
Yeah, so that was another important thing for me. It's like obviously the story changes, but like, over a couple runs that probably kind of will feel the same. The other thing that I integrated is that the monsters that you'll encounter in this will evolve, and they'll evolve differently each time you play. So as you kind of progress in the game, they'll get different effects. So if you could think, one time they'll get a little bit faster, one time they'll do a little bit more damage, one time they'll be able to detect you a bit easier. As like kind of like minor upgrades, and then I have a kind of section for what I call major upgrades or evolutions. And so they'll get less of those, but they'll be fairly impactful. And so I kind of hinted at this before, but for example, the monster at default, you can close doors at him, like right in front of his face, and he'll just like, okay, well, I guess I can't get you. But at one point, he might get the upgrade or the evolution. Well, now he actually decides, I'm going to smash this door down and come get you. But you won't necessarily know that until he smashes the door down and is coming to get you. But in another, if you play the game again, you might not actually do that anymore. He'll just do a different thing that might also terrify you and scare you in a different way. And so that's kind of the way that I wanted to keep that part of the game fun, because you won't necessarily know coming into it how the monsters are going to come at you or pursue you.
That's interesting, bro. Dude, so you're going to actually find out if he can smash the door the moment that he smashes the door. I can see myself having fun. And screaming and talking a lot of BS on stream. I do a lot of that. Like I'm like super. I want to analyze this, and I'm trying to be super proper, and using the right words and all this on. It's like, oh fuck, guys, what the hell is that? And I like explode, and then I just pull myself again. I was like, okay, guys, let's start from the beginning. It's great. I enjoy it a lot. So you mentioned that you've been streaming the development process on Twitch, right? So
yeah,
let's talk a little bit about that community and what we know now that exists out there, and not just only a few there to do, which is open development. How has the community, how has been the feedback from the community, and how much did it influence the design choices and the evolution of the game?
I mean, quite a lot, honestly. Like, I came into this because when I started developing this, I had, just to give some background, I have a day job where I still work as a game dev, but it's for a mobile company. And kind of coming into this, I really love my day job, but part of the frustrations that I get is I can't talk to people about like what I'm doing today, right? Because it's licensed to a big IP. Yeah. I can't talk about these things because we like to for a reason, right? Like big companies, they want to have a streamlined marketing push at the right point to hit the right moments, right? But as a single dev, I'm really passionate about what I'm working on here. Like I want to just like scream it out loud, right? Yeah. And so I was like, oh well, why don't I just stream it all in dev? That's a novel idea, and I was a little bit ignorant in the fact that there's a lot of people that actually do this. I'm definitely even the smallest of the fries that do this. There's a lot of big names that will stream their game dev online. But through that process, I've met a couple of people that follow it a little bit more in depth, and I've just always been really open about my process. Right, I've had before I even had the demo up on Steam, which I've had up for like probably over a year now. That I constantly update. I had like small private playtests in my Discord. I even have a video of like the first ever like build, and it's like unrecognizable from this version. Like it was like a top-down like 2D game, and it's changed a lot. It went to first person for a while, and then went to third person just kind of like in the last couple of months or so.
I've seen how
and that's all because I've had people play it, right?
Yeah, how the background has changed and the design of the game. It's huge. Like, it's different. It's completely different.
And part of that is because because I stream, I feel like I have this a bit easier in talking to other streamers, especially I can't really just cold call like a big guy, but I'll drop into a moderate sized streamer, just hang out for a long time over a while, kind of build a relationship, and then one day we kind of talk about my game, and I'll eventually have them play it, and then because they play it live and I can actually see them struggling on certain points, that gives me so much more insight on what to fix. And so because I've had all those people play it, I've had this ability to kind of refine the tutorial over and over and over again until it's pretty smooth. Like, I've gotten to a point where most people can get through that first tutorial part without much issues. Where before I've had people that like couldn't open the first door on my game. Like, they'd come into the first door that has a letter on it, and they would stare at it and be like, "I don't know what to do, man." Like, they'd just be stuck there, and it would be the most frustrating thing ever to see. But we've come a long way from there, and now most people can at least get through the main part. There's still some stumbling blocks that I have to kind of iron out, and some mechanics, but it's only because I can see them struggle with that I know. And I worry with a lot when I see other game devs, and they'll spend like 3 years and they'll show little clips and stuff like that. Well, it's like, how do you know people are going to like it, right? Like, and I couldn't imagine myself working on something for any sort of time without kind of that feedback from people. Where, like, that's almost the part I crave most, is just seeing people play it is like almost the most enjoyable thing about doing game dev to me. So I really enjoy when I can catch people playing it, and then I can use it to further refine my game.
I have a question here from one of the guys. Let me risky. There we go. So I just always pick like one random question. I ask the guys, send me questions for this, for that. I give them a background story, but I think this one's very, very good because we talked about the sound and how the Morse code integrates into the gameplay. But this guy is asking, so how can you give us like a specific example on how the Morse code will integrate to like a puzzle or a part of the game? I think that's what.
Sure. I mean, obviously the simplest part is you enter into doors, but then there's also the listening part. So there's a bunch of chests that you'll find, like lock boxes that are locked, and the only way to get through them is you have to hack them, but you have to listen to the Morse code and then type in whatever the code is. So that's the simplest parts. But then there's also these other things that I have called fabricators, which are kind of rooms that you'll find in kind of periodic level points. And the idea on those is they can make you a bunch of useful stuff, but you have to do this kind of like challenge, and they're always Morse code related. So one of them will be, that there'll be screens that show up and they'll show a letter, but you can't always see all of them at the same time. So you have to kind of run around, find the screen, see the letter, put that Morse code in, and kind of keep doing that loop all the while, a monster's chasing after you, and you have to not die from that thing. There's another version of that one another fabricator where the monster isn't there, but there's like 4 different screens that you have in a room, and they each have a letter, and then it's beeping Morse code at you. And so you have to run to the monitor that has the correct letter on it, enter that in, and keep doing that within a certain time frame. If you don't do it within a certain time frame, you fail the challenge and you don't get the loot, essentially. But yeah, I definitely intend to create a lot of those. And then there's the last one that I haven't quite got to yet, but there's some boss battles that I'm going to do that will, of course, have some degree of Morse code to interact with certain elements that will defeat the boss and stuff like that.
Interesting. I have a second one that I want to read. I know who exactly wrote this, but I'm not going to throw it under the bus because he's always kind of like an a-hole. But it says, oh my God, I'm not going to read that part because he's involving me and I'm not even like, he said, Joe told us that this game features survival horror elements. We all know, and he lists in here, like, we all know the hallmarks of survival horror, like inventory management, the scars of ammo, the puzzles, tank controls, maybe. Not necessarily. Joe told me that they're not necessarily a thing, but they're on the OGs. The map, anything else, character development, of these hallmarks, which of those would you believe that are very well used in the game, and how? This guy is just he's another thing.
Basically, the question is like, what like makes this game a survival horror?
What elements would you believe that you use? Yeah, I would have done it like this.
Yeah,
but
so in my mind, obviously, there's no direct combat. Like you don't have guns or anything, so that part isn't there. But the things that I really took away with when I watched a lot of people analyzing kind of survival horror and talking about that. And kind of the things I took away are more like I could see like the haunting grounds type level of survival horror, where there is like backtracking, right? So you can't take all the items that you have and fit them into your inventory at once. So you have to pick certain items up, go back to a storage area, keep those in those things. You have to take items to unlock portals to progress and do those things. There's also a lot of crafting in, so you'll get items to craft upgrades and all that stuff. So I think there's that kind of portion of it that I think fits a lot. And the part on that is the backtracking, right? With inventory management, because you can't fit everything in your inventory, so you have to kind of make choices about what you're going to take with you, what you're going to leave until maybe to come back to do later. The other thing that I liked about the fabricators is that there's kind of a mechanic where you have certain days and then you sleep, and then in the next day you can use the fabricator again, but you can't use it like continuously on the same day. So you'll want to kind of mark out where these locations are on your map, and so you can come back to them later and kind of regain the items. So that is kind of that area where I took the survival horror instinct. Obviously, there's not the kind of traditional combat portions of it, but those are the kind of like the elements that I really linked into when I was thinking.
Yeah, basically, it is presence in the idea behind developing these new things that we're gonna try when we play SOS, which is always good. I'm a fool for fresh stuff. So in the bigger picture, ultimately, what do you hope players take away from SOS Forgotten Planet? And you can build on that premise both emotionally and mechanically.
Obviously, the mechanical aspect is, I hope they come away learning a little bit of Morse code. Most people that I've seen kind of play the demo at least kind of come away after about an hour, just at least knowing kind of like the first few kind of letter combinations.
Yeah.
So I already see that as a pretty awesome takeaway from any video game, that they kind of like at least have something they can kind of brag to their friends about, like, hey, I know these little bit of Morse code, right? I think that's kind of a cool aspect. But on the story aspect, I hope that they kind of come up with it's a lot of themes of like how family legacy impacts you and how, certain expectations get put on you because of the family you came from, and how that kind of can lead you to dark places, as Clara's about to find out in the story.
There's an element of psychological horror in there.
Yeah.
Love it. So we're getting to that final stretch. We're going to start with the quick fire questions, the questions that nobody ever asks, response quick.
I'll do my best.
The best survival horror game of all time from your view?
Tough. At least personally, the one that I enjoyed playing the most back in the day was the first. Oh my God, why am I blanking on the name? Dead Space.
Dead Space.
There we go. I really loved playing that one back in the day.
It's a great game.
It was probably one of my first, a true, I think, survival horror games that I played. I really still regret not playing the whole playthrough with just the pistol, because I basically used that. I bought the assault rifle once. I used it. I hated it, but then I didn't get the achievement for only using the pistol.
You'd be surprised that there's a very, very big chunk of the dark corners of the internet that believe that Dead Space is not a survival horror game. So in a survival horror setting, this is just me trying to amp up these questions. I don't know how this is gonna go, but in a survival horror setting, would you rather play as a deaf protagonist or a mute character?
As a deaf one or a mute one?
That would be super interesting. I don't know. I came up with that the other day. Maybe I should build something on that.
I mean, I think death is definitely more terrifying because in some ways you can't hear things coming towards you. Although I feel like as a player playing it, it might end up too gimmicky. Like you won't play like a whole game about that, because I think over time sound plays such a crucial part of like building the tension that if you had a game that just was completely like no sound, I think it would just not feel as scary, right?
Yeah. How about I put you in a situation where you're taking care of a very vulnerable character that is a secondary, and you have to guide it, and that character is deaf.
Yeah, there's definitely aspects. I've had like concepts of where like, you know, you're a caretaker of somebody, and you like live in like a, I don't know, post-apocalyptic or some weird messed up world where monsters are always trying to kill this child.
Just don't make her.
And your job is to like make her childhood feel normal. So you're like killing these monsters while she's just like playing with her toys.
I love what's the name of that game? Oh my god, how can I forget? It's so good. A Plague Tale. Oh yeah, that's the game. That's the game. You're taking care of your little brother, and then it's just the whole story, the lore, the emotional stuff in that game makes you feel like sometimes you're the worst person, but at the same time, this is so beautiful. This is so good. You're desperate. You want to know what's going to happen. You don't want nobody to, you know, it's great. And the last question is, I think you kind of answered this through the podcast, but I just want to pick your brains. Map or no map?
I mean, I in my game I've kind of chosen a middle ground. I think like the thing I like maps, but I don't like the player indicator. That's the kind of my typical point is like I like to have that player involvement. One of my favorite games I played with my wife was Outwards, I think it's called. It's Out something. But it's like a fantasy. No, it's just Outward. It's like a survival game. Yeah, it's a survival game that you can play co-op. But one of their unique things was making like very brutal. And then another thing that they had is they had a map, but you didn't know where you were. So you had to like actually like identify, you know, landmarks and use that to kind of figure out where you were. I thought that was really cool, and it just makes you feel a little bit more involved. Otherwise, you kind of get there's this like thing like I can't remember what it was, just like autopilot people where they'll just like be moving and they'll look at their map only, and that's the only thing they're doing. And I feel like it pulls you out of the gameplay a little bit.
That's me. That's I came up with this idea, put a name. We call it Survival Horror 101 Backtracking. And I showed the people to start from, you know, you get to a new area. This is your indicator, and these are the doors, and you see them. They're locked, and their games are good enough that they just tell you like you already went through this door and whatnot, right? But there are others that you can't see nothing. And matter of fact, I just finished Heartworm, which they did an incredible job with the map, because the map, you open it, and then it tells you, it has colors, right? It tells you like this is the area you're in right now. This is the if you have something pending, but it doesn't tell you where you're at. So it's like you need to like look at it and okay, so you're in here. So you know you're in that area. At least you know that. But you have to like the polygons, like move them in your mind and try to figure out the map, which adds another extra layer of tension, because then you're pausing the game. There's ads, there's stuff, there's like the horror tension, and you're trying to figure this out as you go, which I found like totally great. Hey, Ricky, Risky, I call you Ricky again. Risky.
You said you would at least mess that up.
Yeah, I told you this is going to happen. So, Risky, I truly hope SOS Forgotten Planet achieves everything you have envisioned, and you've been working so hard to it. So, I think I always say to the devs, I hope it goes above and beyond. Thanks for your time, and any last words for the people watching? The microphone is yours.
Yeah, I mean, thanks again for having me. If you're interested in the game after what you heard here, check it out on Steam. There's a demo that I'm constantly updating. I'm probably about like a week away from getting another update to that thing. So yeah, constantly check there, and then check out the stream if you're interested in learning a little bit more about Behind the Curtain and on there. So that's on Twitch.
So guys, I'm gonna put the Twitch link. I'm gonna put the Steam link for you to download the demo and try it out. This was La Bóveda, SOS Forgotten Planet. Thanks again, Risky, and until the next time, guys.
You see that door over there? It has a letter code. If you transmit that code in Morse, it'll open.
Something's just not right about what our teachers taught us. That a once benevolent ruler suddenly goes mad, and then almost completely destroys an entire planet. Doesn't that seem a bit strange to you?
Are you absolutely sure about this? We could still leave now and no one would even know we were here.
I've waited my whole life for this. There's no way I'm going back.
Just don't blame me if something bad happens.
What was that?